My name is Jeffrey Morgan. I am from SD 16 and I am a delegate. And I'm going to keep track of the time, so keep on track. I'd like to talk about the issue of protecting children by avoiding unnecessary family fragmentation. My friend David talked about protecting children by making sure they have access to both parents. I want to talk about unnecessary family fragmentation. And I'm very glad, ma'am, that you mentioned the issue of no-fault divorce. I've got this article, No-Fault Divorce Born in the Soviet Union. And no-fault divorce is the policy, the divorce policy of the state of Texas. So I'd like to do a real brief history lesson, if you don't mind. So Vladimir Lenin was the one who said, destroy the family, destroy society. And one of the first things he did was to implement a new divorce law. He knew that he had to destroy the family and he had to destroy the church. In 1918, he brought about he substituted ecclesiastical or church marriages and he made them all civil marriages. And he also made divorce on demand an option. Now, I believe at the beginning it was mutual, but as time went by, it became unilateral divorce, in which one person could divorce another person at will for any reason, for no reason. In fact, in 1918 as well, they had this place called Vladimir City. And because the important issue of the party was to make sure that the people were indoctrinated by the state, at the age of 18, girls had to register with the Free Love Association, at which point they could become somebody's wife for a month or whatever, and with or without her consent. So basically that was, you would have men that would have maybe 15 marriages, 20 wives, something like that. And the product of the pregnancy would become property of the state. By 1930, marriages can be terminated in an informal mutual agreement or unilateral abandonment, desertion without announcement or without agreement. By the mid-1930s, and actually prior to that, the Bolshevik Russia realized they had a huge problem. Juvenile delinquency, abortion rates were skyrocketing. They had kids that were being raised and did not have the emotional skills and everything, the intellectual skills, to become a good, productive citizen. So in 1936, they tried a new law to help stop this madness. The purpose of the law was to try to struggle with the issue of cavalier divorces. They tried to make divorces a little bit easier. The people of the USSR are convinced that not only in a socialist, but even in a perfect communist society, nobody will be able to replace the parents, the loving father and mother. And divorce, as we know, severs that relationship, often with the parents and the child, that type of a relationship. They also found out that extrafamilial families, or extrafamilial agencies, perhaps CPS, perhaps foster care, could never provide the love and nurture that a parent could. Anti-family policies were leading in a situation where many children in the Soviet Union, the urban generation, simply lacked the kind of socialization skills necessary to become a good Soviet person. Well, what happened is later on, the Soviet Union again tried to take measures to encourage keeping families together, to encourage large families. The Soviet Union has actually taken bigger steps than we have in the state of Texas. So I know I've got not much time left here, so let me go very quickly. What I wanted to talk about with the issue of unilateral divorce. No-fault divorce is putting lipstick on a pig. No-fault divorce is forced divorce. It's unilateral divorce. In fact, it's also unconstitutional. And if you look at the Texas State Constitution, you can also see the same thing in the federal Constitution. No unilateral divorce, divorce on demand for any reason, for no reason, forced divorce, violates Article 1, Section 6 of our Texas Constitution, which stipulates that men and women have a right to worship Almighty God, and that no human authority ought in any circumstance to be able to control their interfere with the rights of conscience in matters of religion. Article 1, Section 13 states that every person shall have remedy by course of law. In a divorce lawsuit, you have a predetermined outcome in the state of Texas. The person who files gets the divorce automatically, without exception, 100% of the time. There is no remedy by law. Article 1, Section 16 prohibits making the bill of attainder or any law impairing the obligation of contracts. The Texas Family Code refers to marriage as a contract, and yet the state of Texas is impairing the obligations of contracts. Article 1, Section 19, no citizen shall be deprived of life, liberty, privileges, or immunity in any manner disenfranchised except by due course of the land. Article 3, Section 5613, the Texas Constitution forbids the legislature from creating a special law granting divorce. Unilateral divorce is just what the legislature has done. And I won't take any questions. I tried to rush through that. Thank you.
Questions?
Question.
Sure.
Carrying on to SB 19.
Yes.
So what would your recommendation be?
So I've got a few recommendations. First off, marriage is not just a private interest. Even the Soviets knew that there was a public interest in marriage. When you get a marriage license, what is the state of Texas saying? They're behind you to have this marriage. We can't get a temporary marriage license. Can I go to the state and say, I want a 2-year marriage license? No. The idea is that it's supposed to be permanent. So the state has a legitimate reason to defend that, that contract. So what I would say is this. First off, if you do have a situation in which there are people, because usually no-fault divorce is one person. It's not mutual by and large. It's one person. So the courts, in California, when Governor Reagan signed this in 1969, they used to have these conciliation courts first. That was the first step of the process. And it was to try to reconcile and save marriages. And actually they were seeing over 30% of the marriages approximately being saved. The Soviet Union did the exact same thing. Ukraine had done that. Ukraine, and they found about 50% of the marriages could be saved. And I think we need to have not just a cooling off time. 60 days is nothing as far as a cooling off time. There needs to be some type of active involvement, and the state should say, you need to prove to me, and the Soviet Union came to this place, prove to me why you should be getting a divorce. Because your divorce is not just affecting you and your children, it's also affecting our society. And as David said, talking about the increase in crime, juvenile delinquencies, taxes that you pay, all these different things. The breakdown of marriage is the foundational problem. We destroy the family, like we have been doing indiscriminately for 50 years. Many needless divorces, and one judge, Alice O'Leary, talks about that. Many needless divorces. They feel that we have an obligation to try to at least save the marriage. And if we aren't doing that, if a judge says, as a judge told me, I have to get a divorce, there's nothing I can do, even though all the evidence showed otherwise. There is something wrong with that. He's not acting in a judicial manner. He's acting in a ministerial manner. He's not exercising any discretion. He's violating the Texas Family Code, and we're also having our constitutional rights taken from us. But the idea is that some divorces are necessary. We're not talking about abolishing all divorces. Divorce is always traumatic for the children, even the necessary ones. But the unnecessary divorces are even more traumatic and cause greater stresses and strains. And that's why I've been talking about this issue, protecting children, to see both parents, protecting children from needless family fragmentation. I believe this whole thing needs to be a legislative priority as well. Thank you.
What would the cooling off period be?
So that's a very interesting question. There is a correlation between a longer cooling off period and a reduced divorce rate. So I think what we should ask ourselves, is it better to see divorces reduced or increased? And I think all of us would say, well, wait a minute, if the marriage is going to be fixed, we should try to fix them. I can't tell you what it is right now. I would say that 60 days is way too short, because 60 days can be used as a hammer against your spouse. We've got 60 days to get this done. You can't, if you've been married for 25 years, you cannot resolve these things in 60 days. And I would say, I would be much more inclined to a year. Some states have 2 years. I know in other countries they have 5 years. I'm not telling you, this is not the issue that I'm referring to right now, but we do need to talk about the issue of an extended cooling off period. And the second thing is, because of the religious marriages, like say with Catholics who go through a specific, they take very specific steps to have a Catholic marriage. And the Catholic doctrine is marriages are indissoluble. So why is a sacrament of the Catholic Church, why is the state of Texas allowed to exercise its political influence and destroy a sacrament of the Catholic Church? There should be something, that's what Lenin did. Remember, he took the marriages out from away from the ecclesiastical authority, and he gave them to the civil society. And the civil society destroys marriages. And what these gentlemen, what David Bello talked about, he was being very nice to talk about what some of these judges do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very
Thank you so much. I
very good,
appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank you.